Thank you. So again, we'll open the meeting, and first point of business is approval of agenda. One, an introduction of any late items. Joyce?
I've got one too, Fred. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Sorry, I was just going to approve the agenda.
Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to add appointment of the auditor for 2022.
Okay.
And I'd like just a period of general discussion about the resident versus non-resident taxes and service charges, and then also employee retention.
Oh, small subject.
Discussion.
Yeah, okay.
Well, employee retention might be a closed meeting discussion.
I would think so.
And I'm not sure what you mean by resident and non-resident taxes.
Well, if we could, rather than discussing it now, could we just have a brief discussion under information items? Because I don't expect to see a resolution from it.
It should be new business.
Yeah.
New business then. Okay.
Okay, we'll add that briefly as new business.
There's a 5-minute moment for other business. Can go there.
Okay. Joyce made a recommendation to approve the agenda, I assume as amended.
As amended?
Yeah.
Okay, Allison, you seconding? Or John?
Yeah.
That's fine, thank you.
Second.
Okay, we have adoption of minutes, 2.1, minutes of the July 22nd meeting. And a recommendation that the minutes of the FAC meeting held July 22nd be adopted. Do I have a recommender? Joyce?
So move.
Second, Allison. Oh, any revisions before we vote? Seeing none, thank you. All in favor? Okay, we'll go on to that. Public comments, Steph, 3.0. None, thank you. Okay, point 4, updates, 4.1 for Liam. Capital projects verbal update.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So I'll go through the list in a similar order that we did last time. So the fire hall, the new fire hall that is complete and operational. It's up and running. I'm not sure if I wasn't able to attend the public open house on the weekend, but I understand it was well attended, and there was some lovely speeches from the fire chief and the mayor, and then a wonderful announcement about the Biddlecombe Memorial Fund, which is a fantastic legacy and recognition of Brian Biddlecombe. And the fire hall itself, in terms of construction, has gone really well. It's remained on budget. It obviously is a little bit behind schedule because we had anticipated moving in earlier, a couple of months earlier, but that's okay. And so, you know, there's still some finishing work to be done, mostly around the landscaping on the outside. But we do have a source on free topsoil with our partners from Metro Vancouver, so that's a great thing there. So really, the project is, in my view, an example of the municipality and the partners that made the project become a success. As you all know, the project at one point was being billed or being anticipated to be very expensive with tenders that came in 3 times the budget. But we were able to bring it back on track, close to the budget. The original budget was 3 million, and we're hovering around 3.6. So I think that's a pretty remarkable job on that part.
Mm-hmm.
And so then moving on to the multi-use path, I think that's another great success story. That project continues to move along. So phase 1 was the phase from Miller Road to Artisan, and that's been complete for a while now. And then phase 2 is from Cardina Road up to Miller Road. And that is really just waiting for paving. I think we've all heard what happened there with the Trunk Road stormwater drain system compromising the project and creating a safety hazard in the cove. And so that delayed the project, and it's since delayed the repaving. We anticipate to get the repaving done this fall, hopefully in October. And so one of the great things about that project is we decide, oh, I'm merging into the Trunk Road project now. One of the great things about the Trunk Road project is that we ended up doing that project in-house. The early cost estimates for that project were indicating that it would be in the order of $1.5 million. And we decided that we could do it cheaper by doing it in-house. And in order to do that, we also needed to hire an additional roads person. And the total cost of the project from a salary point of view was only in around $45,000. And so the actual project cost is coming in at about half of the estimated budget price. So if not lower. So there's tremendous savings that have been found through doing the work in-house. And that's going to enable us to redirect some of those funds to other priority road projects in and around the community. So I think that's a really positive example of how we can find savings internally, and we'll want to continue to do that type of work. Just coming back to the multi-use path, we are exploring what's called phase 4, which is really the next phase, which is from Artisan Square to Grafton Lake Dam. And we're looking at multiple routes and paths there. And we're looking at multiple options, and we're also pursuing a grant with the province for funding. And that application is going to be submitted soon. And so that will help determine how much of that next phase we're able to accomplish. There are various route alignments that could be pursued there. No matter what, each of the route alignments requires partnership or agreements with property owners, private property owners. And no matter what, it's going to be a costly section, probably the most costly section because of the difficulty of the terrain and the steepness that we're dealing with there. We are also working with the developer of Grafton Lake Lands about advancing the next phase beyond the Grafton Dam to Harding Road, which that developer will be responsible for. And then from Harding Road to Bowen Bay Road, we only have conceptual cost estimates for that at this point in time. And so we're going to look at zeroing in on that in the near future. Grafton Road Culvert Replacement Project is complete, and they did a section, an additional sort of section on the downslope side to accommodate for the new multi-use path. And so you may have seen that if you walk along that trail, you'll see there's a really nice big trail portion that gets you up and over that culvert section. And then the library cultural corner is, I'm not sure why there was such a stall there from the concrete forming to the framing of the pavilion itself, but the majority of the other work around the landscaping and the benches has all been complete. And so I'm not sure, but I believe that they're targeting completion early this fall for the actual pavilion itself. Cove Bay Water Treatment Plant, we did get to agreement with the technology provider Purifics and our design engineers, WSP, through a third-party engineer that we hired to help mediate between the two to come up with a solution. And they are beginning work on that solution this week. And so that, fingers crossed, we'll have that solution completed maybe Well, I actually don't know when that might happen, so I'm not going to say something that'll you'll hold me to. But I'm glad that we finally got to a place where we're able to move that forward. The community center project is around 15% complete. The majority of the concrete has been poured and completed. We're now looking at the big slab pours for the interior slab on grade. And following that, there'll be what's called a suspended slab. And so that's the slab that is for the large multi-purpose room, the big theater space. And that's that big concrete wall that you see when you go up the hill there. And there's many details that are being ironed out as we advance the project. And one thing that is becoming clear to us is that we really need to take our original business case and our original operational plans and ideas of the project and start to bring them to ground to make them more real and more detailed, because the reality of the project coming to completion is upon us. And so we need to make sure that we've got a good operational plan in place for when we're able to open the doors. And so that's targeting next fall. So far things are tracking fairly well with that project. Wastewater treatment plant, where that project has been underway for a while now. You may have noticed there's a big box that's being built right near Dorman Road, and that's the attenuation tank that's needed to help accommodate the excessive flows that we've been seeing. And I'm not sure if that was poured. I haven't driven by there in the last week or so, but I know that they were aiming to have that concrete poured in and around now. So again, that project is tracking fairly well, looking for completion early in the new year, if not sooner. So those are there are some other capital projects underway for certain. We have other culvert projects on Harding Road and Adams Road, the bottom of Adams Road. The Harding Road project is set to go. We could start today, but we're waiting for a provincial permit that has not been approved yet. And so that's the only piece that's holding us up there. Any questions about any of those projects?
Thank you, Liam. Any questions for Liam?
What's the Adams Road one?
It's at the bottom of Adams Road. I guess it might be considered more in the Sealy Park neighborhood area.
So it's right at the bottom of the road before you go to the beach, between Ian Henley's driveway and the beach.
I'm not sure about that specific location, but I know it's right down near the end of the road there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
That answers questions I got on Saturday.
Okay. So no other questions. Thank you, Liam. Appreciate that. We'll now move to 4.2, capital project financing report. And Kristen will be turning to you for that. Thank you. And you did provide an attachment, I think, regarding the capital expenditures report as of September 24th.
Yeah, it's on page 8 of 21 of the agenda. This is sort of a preliminary first cut at providing an actual financial report with year-to-date numbers against the capital projects budget. I've kind of laid them all out in detail. What I think this report is still missing, and what I'm going to move it in the direction to, is what's been spent in prior years. So I'm not showing you here what we spent on the community center last year. I'm not showing you here what we spent on the fire hall last year. So as I did tell you, it's kind of an organic document, and as I create new iterations of it and continue to build it, I'm going to pull in those historical prior year expenditures. So I just wanted to let you know where I'm going with this report.
Yeah,
but
no, I appreciate that. And I think that's a good point. Just a suggestion, perhaps, that for multi-year projects will run into the future as well. You may want to report future period expenditures
Yeah,
that have already been approved.
yeah, absolutely.
But I think I appreciate the report.
Okay, good, good. Yeah,
Can I
Sarah?
ask
Yeah,
one question? It would be really nice you answered half of what I was going to ask, would be in the future. If the other is how much we spent versus how much grant money we got for them. I think
Okay.
would be really
mhm.
useful.
What it requires is some changes to the way our accounts are set up.
Yeah.
And I know where I want to go with it. It's just a big pile of work to implement that and incorporate it into our current GL structure. But I absolutely agree with you. And I know what I want it to look like too. And I think that we're probably pretty closely aligned on that. So again, it's a work in progress and it will just get better over time.
Yeah, no, I appreciate what you're undertaking. I think it's a good start. John, you had your hand up?
Yes, just a minor thing, but unfortunately Bowen Bay will probably have an expenditure. They're trying to find a water leak now. So as to what that will be, I guess we don't know, so we can't enter it.
Okay, thank you. Any other comment? Oh, I'm sorry, he let you start. Anything, Kristen, please? Your comments?
Well, sure. I wanted to just maybe talk about some of the big variances, like for example, the community center. We thought I had put in the budget initially that we'd probably spend $8.5 million on it this year. Keep in mind that when I was doing the budget, it was quite early, just as the project been executed. So we didn't actually have that cash flow report from Golden Globe yet. I know now we have a cash flow report, so I don't think that we're going to burn through $8.5 million before the end of the year, but it'll be more deferred and it'll be incurred next year. So that, that's kind of just a little bit of reasoning between why the expected spend is such a big variance from what the budget initially said. Fire hall, as Liam reported, on time and on budget. There is a little bit of an overage, but at the same time, there's something that we have sitting in a deficiency account that we're still negotiating and finalizing with the contractor. It's a very small amount, so they'll probably offset. But again, $15,000. If we need to fund that from the fire department reserve, we have that money there to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the storm sewer replacement. So the initial cost, again, that very early budget, without knowing anything, we had $1.5 million in the budget. It is actually, we think it will be complete and finished at 518. So that's about a third of what we budgeted. Patrick will be coming to council next council meeting with a request to use some of that unspent money. I'm very conscious of preserving that unspent money as much as we can to fund for these other construction projects that we have on the go. So he's going to be coming to council the next meeting with a request to use some of it to address the Hikers Trail Road, the entrance to Mount Gardner. There's quite a awful situation with the road and the parking there. So he's going to be coming to ask for council approval to use an amount of that to address that. So that will be brought to council at the next meeting.
So these are all necessary projects, really.
Absolutely, yeah. But again, because we are very cognizant of trying to preserve surpluses and unspent money where we can, they will all, any request to use them will be brought, a significant amount like that would be brought to council.
You bet.
Councilor Moore's had her hand up.
Yeah, so where is the funding was coming out of the capital renewal and replacement fund or out of the roads budget for the storm sewer?
It was a combination. Some of it is the TransLink OMR, the operating and maintenance fund. So we'll be accessing all of those. Some of it was
road network,
capital renewal and replacement. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Wastewater treatment plant, as Liam reported, it will not be completed by the end of this year. So some of it is going to carry forward into next year. The water treatment plant, we've just let a couple of contracts with Industra and WSP to finalize it. We think that between now and the end of the year, we anticipate that work will wrap up for the most part by December 31st, and the water treatment plant will be able to be brought online just around the end of the year. So it's going to cost us another $365,000 to get it there. We have that money in the Cove Bay Reserve funds. There was actually additional funding in Cove Bay Reserve funds that was never brought into the construction budget. So that money is still there and available to fund that. So the Cove Bay Water District's not looking to the general fund to pay for that additional cost and that it's going to cost to bring the plant online. So that's funded by the Cove Bay.
Was that funny little thing that was always carried forward in deferred revenue?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Multi-use path, there is 489 coming in just about on budget what we had expected it to. That whole grant that project is funded entirely by a federal government grant. ICIP is what it's called. The total grant award was $647,000. Liam mentioned something about the additional multi-use path work that will be requested of council to approve. And we're going to approach the funder to ask if we can use that unspent money. There's 140,000 or so unspent money. We're going to request to see if we can get approval to access those funds to fund our contribution of the next section of work that needs to be done. So we don't want to leave any money on the table. If it's been approved, we want to access and spend free money where we can rather than use our own funds. So Patrick and I will talk to the funder and see if we can get that approval. Composting project has no work has been completed on that. I do have it on the finance, which we'll talk about it later, on the finance schedule to bring forward a plan for that later in December this year. The other ones are, for the most part, just our smaller ongoing maintenance-y type capital projects. So they're all coming in as expected or under budget for the most part. Sometimes, things kind of move, but they're paid for by savings in other expenditures that won't occur. The big one, of course, is the fire truck, which has been delivered and is living at the new fire hall now.
It's new home in a new.
Exactly. Yeah. So oh, and the last one then too, there is one significant capital project going on at Tunstall Bay. They are constructing a new reservoir for about $750,000. So that is moving along, and we expect that to be coming in with substantially complete again by December 31st, with just a little bit probably to carry over to the new year to complete. So any questions about the expenditures to date, or did you need clarity or additional information on any of them?
No, I'm not seeing any questions. I appreciate the reporting, and I think that's providing a value to the committee. So that makes a difference for us to have access to this type of detailed information.
Great. Yeah,
Right
well,
level.
it'll only get
not
better.
Too detailed, but appropriately detailed. So
Okay.
I think it works really well for us,
Good.
and I appreciate that.
Okay.
So, okay, thank you. That finishes 4.2. Business arising from the minutes. Okay. Did we approve the minute? We did approve the July. Never mind. Sorry. 5.1 investment strategy follow-up. Kristen has provided information in that regard in a report, and also information from the government in terms of the bond funds themselves, and gives a sense of where that is. And so I'll turn that over to Kristen again, please. 5.1 in your agenda.
Thank you. If you recall, at our last meeting back in July, we kind of brought to the attention of the committee that, like every other individual investor and every other organization across the globe at the moment, we are experiencing some unrealized losses on our bond fund investments. We have about $5.7 million invested in this fund. It is a short-term bond fund. The length of the duration of the fund is about 3 to 5 years. So we spoke to the committee about that back in July, and it was agreed that Liam and I would go and talk to some other municipalities or talk to the MFA themselves, just to kind of inform ourselves about what we should know about investing in this kind of climate. We spoke with the CEO of the MFA itself. We spoke with the District of North Van, who has a very robust investment strategy to just kind of see where they were going with theirs investments. I think what we heard, Liam, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but across the board, what we heard was we need to hang on to those investments and not actually sell them and capitalize on those losses if we can. If we can hang on to them for the duration of the fund, which is the 3 to 5 years, then as the underlying securities are mature and sold and new ones, then you have to have a 3 to 5 year time horizon in your investment strategy in order to earn what you're looking for. What we know is that we, with this community center, we don't have all of the funding confirmed at this point. So without that confirmation of funding, we may be in a situation where we need to access those funds. What we don't want to do is access those MFA bond funds unless we absolutely have no other cash to fund the construction of the capital project. We over the longer term, what we need to do is watch the value of that investment and move our funds out of it. But we want to do that in a way that we're not, taking those losses, because once we do actually report and report on those unrealized losses at the end of December 31st. If that value is lower than the book value, we actually will book an unrealized loss. But if you can kind of think of it in a way that it's actually a clawback of those gains that we reported in prior years where we didn't actually sell the investment. We didn't actually earn those gains. They were paper gains. So it's kind of a resettling, kind of a rebalancing of that fund. And we had some very significant gains in prior years. And it's actually really unfortunate that we didn't sell the investment at that time and crystallize and capture those gains. We have these paper gains. Now in these following up years, we have these paper losses that are kind of netting out. It points to me that we need a much more oversight over our investments, and we can't just ignore them and let them sit there and not pay attention to what's going on. So I was, I was hoping to get some feedback from the committee about taking that approach to try and just sit and hold and wait for the recovery.
Joyce?
There we go. First of all, it was really helpful to have your comment about prior to 2016, the market value equaling the book value and the change that happened at that point. Somehow I missed that, and it makes a huge difference in reporting and how you're assessing what your investment is. Secondly, I'd like to comment that obviously if we need the money at a time for the community center, we have to access it. But at this point, it'd be crazy to plan for that unless somebody has a crystal ball and thinks that everything's going to go into the dumper further. So, my feeling is your hold strategy is right. But third, what I really would hope that this will force us to do as a municipality is to come up with a robust oversight of our investment. We've got too much money invested to not be paying attention to it. Agreed. And it breaks my heart that we did not realize those gains that we could have realized. Everybody else on Bowen was doing it as they were selling their houses and stuff, but we weren't paying attention to our investments. So I look forward to a discussion on a policy and a system for how we approach that oversight.
If I could just to your point, Joyce, And when we look at the proposed meeting schedule, I brought that investments reports back, and I think it needs to be a standing item on every single finance committee going forward, saying, what is this fund doing? What is the balance? I think that
I agree with that. That's a good point. Thank you.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure who's first, Liam or John. I'll start with Liam and then John.
Oh, I think it was John, but
John? Okay, John, thank you. That's very fair.
Aren't we a little bit hamstrung by the fact that we need to invest conservatively, hence the bond fund? And obviously, if we weren't a municipality, we could be maybe more aggressive going to equities and things like that. But really, we're always going to be investing conservatively because that's the nature of a municipality. And that's the downside, I guess, of going into money market or more like bonds and things like that, is when you have a sudden interest rate climate change, we're going to be hit hard. But really, I think in fairness, I suspect most investors, whether they're in bonds or in other vehicles, are also being hit hard. And the notion of cashing in means that you would sell bonds and move to something else. But of course, you're back to more bonds or more safe vehicles. So I'm not sure it's fair to say we necessarily missed an opportunity by not realizing the gains, because of course, I think, maybe I'm misunderstanding it, is we would have to go back into those same types of vehicles, which again would have been hit the same way. So that's my comment.
Thank you. Liam?
thank you for this, Kristen, and I appreciate the comments. And John, I think there's some valid points that you make there. And yeah, municipalities are quite limited in what they can invest in, but what we're learning about is that there may be some better opportunities there where there's some, at this stage, sort of marginal but meaningful increased rates of return that we could get with some different investment strategy. I think you're right, though, that all the municipalities are feeling this, right? Like, we're not alone in this, because but I think what Bowen has been doing is been very conservative in its investment strategy, and so we've got a lot of it tied up in that bond market, where maybe we could, once we're able to realize, or not realize the losses, but get out of the losses, then we can diversify a little bit better. But the nice thing with the bonds is that you're going to maintain your original position, so you're not going to, it's not going to be dramatically terrible if everything was collapsing.
Yeah, thank you, Kristen.
Yeah, I think it's easy to point fingers and say, oh, we should have captured those gains back in 2020. But when your alternative, to John's point, when your alternative is to move it into something that's earning less than 1% in a guaranteed investment certificate, it's really hard to pull out of something that you're making a lot of money on and go move it into there. So I don't want to point fingers. It's just what I do. My point is that we can't just let those investments, ignore them and let them sit there and think, oh, they're invested in MFA funds, they'll be fine. We need to do a better job of actively managing our investments and making sure that we, from now on going forward, take advantage of any gains. And even if we're just divesting some at a time, but to move them into something that's more appropriate. When we had a 3 to 5 year time and we didn't need the funds, that was an appropriate investment. But we need the money now, so it's no longer an appropriate investment for us.
Appreciate that. Joyce?
I just want to remind everybody that something we all know, and that is we may be able to gain back our original investment, but in the meantime, in 3 to 5 years, there's been a lot of inflation that's happened. So actually, you're not gaining back the real value of that you've invested. So all I care about is that we pay attention to our investments. That's the main thing, and that we're consciously making decisions.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Joyce, and from the points that you raised, Kristen, as well. going forward. It's within a conservative framework, but it is still have to be proactive, and the attention is required in that area for any business or organization. So the comment about the whole situation, that makes complete sense to me. Overall, it's a short-term bond. It's less than just under 3 years to maturity. And I think even investment in the future that you identify about possibly laddering investments and such, all that makes sense. And so, yeah, I think we've all of us who have investments in the market have felt the same pain. I felt really good to about a week and a half ago myself, but I mean, that's just the reality. And the fact that you have to go mark to market is that's the way it is in all reporting nowadays. So I think you're headed in the right direction, and I support that. And I think the decision about that potentially requiring cash in 12 to 18 months is one that's going to have to look at closely as to what you may have, because that would obviously, it would be preferable not to have to access into a bond fund to do that. If there's other ways of doing it, I don't know if there's, but you have to look at the cost of even of alternatives. But no, I think you're moving in the right direction, and I would support that overall. I'm more concerned maybe about some upcoming costs in the future on the borrowing side, personally. But I think this is a manageable situation overall. So I appreciate your input onto this. That's all.
Thank you.
I'll move receipt of the report for information.
Fred, you're muted.
Thank you. Anyway, okay, so I appreciate the reporting. We'll now move on to new business 6.1, the FAC meeting schedule. I think a copy of that was provided in your package in terms of prospective times. I don't think we can really determine, other than perhaps the October date. At this point, there'll obviously be new members within the committee following the election, and I think the months that are identified, I think, are appropriate. But I think it was October 27th or 28th, I think, was the dates that were proposed. Are those dates good for the current members that are here?
It would really help with these things if the day of the week was put on the schedule.
Yes.
Well, just sort of, sometimes we have standing things for certain days and certain times. That was all.
Okay.
Thursday. And
Yeah, I think it's a Thursday, Friday is the dates that they're there.
Okay, well, I have a meeting on my calendar for the Thursday morning. I don't know whether it will happen or not, and I won't know that until tomorrow.
Well, I mean, why don't we just throw it?
But I'm good with the 28th.
Okay, why don't we just throw out whatever's good, either the afternoon of the 27th or the morning of the 28th. How's that?
I'm good the afternoon of the 27th or all day the 28th.
Does that sound
School kids who are just coming off the ferry.
Thank you. So at least let's set the date. Okay, well, let's set the date then. How about, do you like mornings best? Okay, how about 10 o'clock on the 28th on the Friday? Let's set that as the tentative date for the meeting, and we'll go forward from that point. Good. Okay, and the other dates we'll have to firm up, and I think realistically, from an agenda point of view, and the outstanding items and stuff, we'll start to flesh that out following the election, probably going forward. And Kristen, you'll have a better sense of timing as it relates to your requirements around that as well. Okay, so that's 6.1. We'll now move on to 6.2, other business. The only thing that we've identified, John, you brought up a point about resident, non-resident.
The auditor appointment, the one I brought up?
Oh, okay, let's do that first, please. So let's bring that, the auditor appointment.
I remember the other
Recommendation?
night that we'd passed a resolution back in I guess December or January to defer for a year going for proposals for the auditor and
Yes,
to appoint BDO for 2021. Chatting with Kristen, she would like to continue to appoint BDO for 2022. So I think we need a recommendation from the FAC that FAC recommend to council that BDO be appointed the auditors for 2022.
any comments or other questions?
Kristen Scott. Yeah.
Kristen?
Thanks. Just specifically with the impact of having a lot of new council members, I think that they will be somewhat supported. It'll be an easier and more helpful transition with them if they're dealing with an auditor that has significant experience with our history, with our finances, and knows what's going on. I think to bring on a new auditor and a new council at the same time will, I think it'll pose challenges for new council and the auditor
staff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do I need to
think
put
it's a good
something
point.
in the
Sorry.
beginning of that resolution that, because we did have a recommendation that it only be deferred for a year, so maybe needs to be double barreled resolution that FAC recommend to council that they not go for proposals for the audit and at this time, and that BDO be appointed for the 2022 audit.
Okay, well, that's will be fairly straightforward then. I appreciate that comment. John?
I mean, in a sense, we're providing, I guess, direction to the new council with this motion. Should we maybe have a little preamble or indicate why we suggest this rather than the new council?
It's not for the new council, John. It's for us to vote on October 24th.
Okay, so on October 24th.
Or October the 11th, council meeting.
The 11th, yeah. So we'll be
Because
on council.
they need to start their pre-work and all that sort of stuff. So they need to be appointed now. Usually you appoint the auditor at the end, right after the annual meeting from the year before.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, well, yeah, and I support it because I think continuity is important looking ahead. Thank you.
Okay, so I think it's fairly straightforward. I'm certainly
I'll mute
supportive of
because
that. That's fine, thank you. So I'll ask Allison's propose that motion. I think, John, you already can indicate you're supportive to second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, that motion is moved. Thank you.
Sorry, just to be clear, the notion is that the Finance Advisory Committee recommend that council not tender proposals for.
A little louder, please, Steph. I can't hear you.
You can't hear
I'm
me.
not hearing you. I can barely hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So the recommendation is the Finance Advisory Committee recommend that council not tender proposals for a new auditor until 2024.
Allison, you're on mute.
At this time, not
Just say at this time.
proposals at this time, and the BDO be appointed for the 2022 audit.
Good point.
Okay, thank you.
Okie dokie.
Oh, we're on the ferry. It's more or less getting back on time.
Okay. Okay. So I think we're finished with that point now. Thank you. Okay, John, next point. You had a point you wanted to just bring forward for a second or two.
yeah, thank you. Thinking about taxes and user fees and other ways of billing residents, I think we're seeing a trend, well, certainly some municipalities and islands are considering a different taxation rate for non-resident versus residents and encouraging the province to get involved to discourage, I guess, non-resident owners owning property. Thankfully, Bowen has been exempt from that move. And I think some of the islands may be quite surprised if they do get a different tax rate for non-residents versus residents. There could be quite a turnover in sale of properties, but unfortunately it won't be sold to the people who are suffering the housing shortage because of course the properties are usually waterfront or large urban are substantial in nature, so they sell at a higher price. And in fact, the unintended consequence is probably going to be more demand on island services because as new residents come in, replacing these seasonal residents, they actually use far more services of healthcare and renovation and building repair, tree fallers, etc. That brought to mind the thought on some of the, there was a recent suggestion of step charges that would, say, for instance, in water, if you're using water, you would pay more than people that were not using water very much. And of course, in some of our water areas, the people that are not using very much water are the people that don't live here full time. And even though their use is higher in summer months, certainly walking around in my neighborhood, even those people that are here, seasonal, the residences are not heavily occupied in the summer months. So by going to these tax structures that, I guess, charge a higher rate for those that use versus those that don't use, we're actually going in the opposite direction that municipalities are. In other words, they're trying to encourage lower rates for people that live and use the services. And I think we should give that some thought. The services, say, for water is a great example, is even though you don't use the water, by having a properly functioning water system that's well funded and well maintained, still adds value even though you don't use the water very much. It adds value on resale. It adds value on the fact that you could suddenly have a huge house full and you have reliable water. So I thought, I know we don't really have a format for sort of discussing, the committee's thoughts on certain policies, but anyway, I thought I'd throw that out there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. We'll receive that comment, and perhaps we'll come back to it at some point in the future and make a note of that. Thank you. Okay, move on to 6.3, move to a closed meeting. And recommendation is contained. Do I have to read it out, Steph? I'll read the first part of it. That the Finance Advisory Committee moved to a closed meeting pursuant to section 91K and L of the Community Charter and identified as 90.1, which is noted in the in our agenda. Can I have a mover and seconder, please? Joyce? Allison, thank you. All in favor?